Adventures in Research. This is Paul Shannon introducing another in the series of programs dealing with the thrilling adventures to be found in the field of scientific research, as told by the men of science themselves. And here is Dr. Phillips Thomas, research engineer of the Westinghouse Research Laboratories, who brings you our story today.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. The story you're going to hear is Dynamite. Long ago, many years before the age of the atom was ever dreamed of, man learned to use the explosive power of black powder, gunpowder. He used it in war and in the interest of his peaceful activities, too. But man searches eternally for something better. Always something better. And that's how it was in the case of explosives. There was a man who found it and put it to use, Alfred Nobel. He and his father were first introduced to the stuff of which his life would be made during the Crimean War in Russia.
For 15 years since its discovery, gentlemen, no one has been able to utilize the tremendous force of this oil, the nitroglycerin. Light it with a match, and it will burn like oil. Strike it with a hammer, and only a small part of it explodes. But it is treacherous, let me warn you. It is extremely treacherous.
And when Alfred's father returns from Russia to his native Sweden, he has found no answer to the problem how to harness nitroglycerin. Then there comes the day when Alfred summons his older brothers, Robert and Ludwig, to witness an experiment beside a canal in the rear of Brother Ludwig's engineering factory.
Robert, Ludwig, see what I've done with the nitroglycerin. I filled a glass tube with it and corked the tube tightly. Inside the tube, with the nitroglycerin, I've inserted a smaller, thinner tube, also tightly corked. That tube contains gunpowder, and this fuse runs down through the gunpowder.
It looks very well, Alfred, but if you ask me, nothing will explode but the gunpowder.
I believe you're right, Ludwig. The gunpowder we know will go off. Father used it in the underwater torpedoes.
But wait, I believe that the concussion of the gunpowder blast will cause all of the nitroglycerin to explode, too.
Well, go ahead. Light the fuse. You'll know soon enough if the nitroglycerin explodes.
Better stand back now. Yeah, I'll light the fuse. There it goes. I'll drop it in the canal here. Now, hold your ears, boys.
It did explode. Alfred, you were right. You were the first man ever to explode nitroglycerin completely.
And so it comes about that Alfred joins his father in the little town of Heleneborg, just outside of Stockholm, in the business of manufacturing nitroglycerin, establishing more of a laboratory than a factory in the near neighborhood of their modest home.
Well, Father, I think we're well on our way.
The shipments are ready?
Ready to be delivered. 50 pounds of nitroglycerin for the mines at Ammerberg and 200 pounds for the Northern Main Railway. All packed and waiting at the plant.
Brother Eric didn't come home with you?
Oh, no, Father. He'll be in soon, though. He's working with the men in the laboratory on the new glycerin refining idea. You know, Father, Eric is smart. I think he'll do better than any of us.
Yes, Alfred. He has the mind for this kind of thing. He's a wonderful boy. Been a great comfort to your mother and me, especially since...
What was that?
An explosion. Alfred, the plant.
Oh, no! No!
Who was in the plant when it blew up?
Well, the maid who kept the place in order, 3 assistants they employed, and the Nobel's youngest son, Eric.
Nitroglycerin, that's what they made. It's terrible stuff. There ought to be a law against it.
You're right. I'd heard of it, but didn't pay much attention. Understand their son Alfred got the patent on it, and they just went ahead and started making it.
Yeah, it must be wonderful for blowing up rocks and so forth. You see what it did to the factory?
Yeah, think what it could do to us. I say there should be a law against it.
So the city makes a law preventing the manufacture of nitroglycerin within the town's limits. But the tragedy doesn't stop the Nobels. Alfred takes up the task, and on a float in a lake beyond the city limits, rebuilds the Nobel nitroglycerin plant. Soon the powerful explosive oil is blasting the way for railroads and mines, not only in Sweden, but on other parts of the continent and in America as well.
Order 50 more cases of nitroglycerin for that mining job at Overberg, Carl.
We'll blast out the rock with nitroglycerin and reach the lode that way. By Jupiter, all the gold in California ain't mined yet by a long shot.
Yeah, that's what I said. A whole shipload of nitroglycerin blew up off the Atlantic coast of Panama. Certainly put it in the paper. It's news, isn't it?
With the expansion of the enterprise, Stockholm, then another plant near Hamburg, another in Norway, and another in Bohemia, comes an ever-increasing stir of public sentiment against the dangerous nitroglycerin. Alfred Nobel is convinced its danger is brought about by ignorance and carelessness in handling, but realizes that it's due to its liquid state, too. So his problem is to get it into solid form, and he does.
The trick is to get the proper absorbent. Charcoal is quite porous and soaks up a great deal of the nitroglycerin, but the silica is an even thirstier material. That's what we'll use. 75 parts of nitroglycerin to 25 parts of silica. I want you to take this sample to the mines in Silesia and try it out. If it's successful, we'll concentrate on making the nitroglycerin in this solid form.
Sounds quite sensible. And what will you call the new explosive?
Call it Dynamite.
In his new Dynamite, Alfred Nobel finds the answer to the safer handling of nitroglycerin. Dynamite catches on. The world begins using it for tunnels, for canals, to blast the way for the expanding lines of rail. Sales are mounting year by year.
1867, sales 11 tons.
1874, sales 3,120 tons.
By this time, there are plants in California, in Finland, Scotland, France, in Spain, Switzerland, Italy, Portugal, and Hungary. Then comes another discovery, perhaps the most impressive of all. Working in his laboratory near Paris with his assistant George Fehrenbach, Alfred Nobel turns to the task of creating an explosive more powerful still than his dynamite. He'll have it, too, if only he can find the way to combine gun cotton, another explosive, with his nitroglycerin. But they refuse to merge.
No use your staying any longer, George. You may as well clean up and finish for the day.
Are you sure you won't need me for anything more, Mr. Nobel?
I think not. Thank you, George.
That's a bad cut on your finger, Mr. Nobel. Better put something on it. See it hasn't stopped bleeding.
It'll be all right. I'll dab some of this collodion on it. That'll seal the cut.
Right, sir. Well, good night.
Good night, George.
Alfred Nobel does dab the cut with collodion, which he has on hand in the laboratory. But it doesn't stop the cut from paining him. All that night, the throbbing in his finger keeps him awake and thinking.
Gun cotton and nitroglycerin. Get them together. Mining engineers need a stronger explosive. Stronger explosive. Something better for men to kill one another with, too. Why can't we stop having wars? Fool pain in my finger keeps bothering me. Gotta get some sleep. Collodion, stop the bleeding. Heavily nitrated stuff, that collodion. Nitrate. Nitrocellulose is nitrated, too. Not so heavy as collodion. That's it. That ought to mix with nitroglycerin? Yes. Nitrocellulose instead of gun cotton.
"4 o'clock in the morning, but Alfred Nobel dresses hurriedly and races down to his laboratory to try the wedding of the two powerfully explosive substances.
Now, a little ether, alcohol added to the mixture. Stir it gently. The composition changes now. The mass begins to look like gelatin.
Blasting gelatin, a discovery inspired by a cut finger and a dab of collodion. After the blasting gelatin comes another discovery, a real boon to the military world, a smokeless form of nitroglycerin. And this he calls ballistite. And so his life runs on, until now in his 60s, Alfred Nobel, lonely, tired, ill with a serious heart ailment, consults a Paris physician.
Mr. Nobel, I should advise you to let up on your work. Rest, relaxation are the best kinds of medicine for you. I don't mean to say you must remain completely inactive, but use your good judgment. Your heart cannot afford much exertion.
I see, Doctor.
These tablets will help you, too. They've been used for a good many years in such cases as yours. I'll give you these and write out a prescription for more.
Tiny little things. What's in them, Doctor?
Nitroglycerin.
How strange. The very substance that had been the basis of the great Nobel industry, the substance that cost the life of Alfred's brother Eric and hundreds more like him, now becomes Alfred Nobel's help to life. Nitroglycerin is his medicine. Now Alfred Nobel returns to his rooms in Paris, picks up a pen, and, placing his writing paper on the desk before him, writes a paper that will keep his memory alive through many years to come. A paper, paradoxically, dedicated to the cause of peace.
I, the undersigned, Alfred Bernhard Nobel, hereby declare, after mature consideration, that the property which I may leave on my death shall constitute a fund, the annual interest on which shall be awarded as prizes to those persons who, during the previous year, have rendered the greatest services to mankind. The interest shall be divided into 5 equal portions.
Leaving nearly all of his fabulous estate to this fund, he specifies a prize each year to the person who shall make the most important discovery in the realm of physics. One prize for the most important chemical discovery or improvement. One for physiology or medicine. One to the person making the most notable contribution to imaginative literature. And one to the person who has done the most effective work to promote friendship between nations and to secure the elimination or reduction of standing armies, as well as for the formation and popularization of peace congresses.
And it is my express wish that the prizes should be distributed without any regard to nationality, so that the prize may be awarded in all cases to the most deserving, whether he be Scandinavian or not.
The will bore the date November 27th, 1895. Little more than a year later, the great scientist and inventor passed away. But behind him, in that will, he left not one lifetime, but many lifetimes, devoted to the cause of peace and happiness among the peoples of the world. Look today at some of the names of winners of the Nobel Prizes for the success of his last great venture.
William Conrad Röntgen.
Pierre and Madame Curie.
Guglielmo Marconi.
Harold Clayton Urey.
Rudyard Kipling.
Maurice Maeterlinck.
Sinclair Lewis.
Eugene O'Neill.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Woodrow Wilson.
Frank B. Kellogg.
Jane Addams.
Today, as time ticks on, and we have found a force many times more potent than Alfred Nobel's dynamite, his spirit and his work may lead our steps in the right direction. And in our age, we may fulfill his hope that
Science can make men happy. And in the end, everlasting peace will supersede the barbarity of war.
And Alfred Nobel's dream is our aim as we travel toward the long road of progress through our adventures in research.
Dynamite, the story you have just heard, is another in a series of adventures in research told by Dr. Phillips Thomas, research engineer of the Westinghouse Research Laboratories. Join us again next week for another story by Dr. Thomas on Adventures in Research.